The dust rose like a curtain of gold in the late afternoon sun as Olivia Neill desperately kicked at the wooden slats of the auction wagon. Her wrists were raw from the ropes that bound them, blood seeping between the fibers as she struggled. Montana Territory, 1876, was no place for a woman alone, but she'd rather face the wilderness than what awaited her at the miners' camp where Harmon planned to sell her to the highest bidder. "You keep fightin' and I'll make sure whoever buys you breaks that spirit real quick," Harmon growled from the driver's seat. Olivia ignored him, working at the splintered board with her boot heel. 3 days in this cage had taught her that Harmon was all threats until sundown when the whiskey made him dangerous. She had until then to make her move. The wagon hit a deep rut, throwing her against the side. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she bit back a cry. The jolt had widened the crack in the wood. One more good kick might do it. "Almost to Copper Creek," Harmon called back. "Got 5 men already paid deposits on you. That pretty face'll fetch a fine price." Panic surged through her as the wagon began slowing. It was now or never. Bracing herself against the opposite wall, she channeled every ounce of strength into her right leg and slammed her heel against the weakened board. The wood gave way with a satisfying crack. Without hesitation, Olivia squeezed through the opening, scraping her sides raw as she tumbled onto the dusty road. She landed hard, the impact knocking the wind from her lungs, but adrenaline propelled her to her feet. Bound hands held before her, she ran toward the thick pines lining the mountain pass. "Hey!" Harmon's angry shout echoed behind her. "Stop her! $50 to whoever brings her back," hooves thundered on the packed dirt. Olivia didn't dare look back. Her lungs burned as she pushed deeper into the trees, branches clawing at her face and tearing at her already ragged dress. The sound of pursuit grew closer. A hand suddenly closed around her arm, yanking her sideways into a small ravine. Olivia opened her mouth to scream, but a calloused palm pressed firmly against her lips. "Quiet," a deep voice whispered in her ear. "I'm not with them." Her eyes, wild with fear, met piercing blue ones beneath a worn leather hat. The stranger was tall and broad-shouldered, with several days of stubble shadowing a strong jaw. A cowboy from his attire, though he wore no identifying brand or mark. The thundering hooves grew louder. Harmon's voice called out, "Check the creek bed." The cowboy pulled Olivia deeper into the ravine, sheltering her behind an outcropping of rock. His knife flashed silver as he quickly cut through her bonds. "You're free," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "But we need to move, now." Rubbing her raw wrists, Olivia nodded. The cowboy led her through the underbrush, his movements silent and sure as a mountain cat. They traveled for what seemed like hours, the sun dipping low behind the jagged peaks, casting long shadows across the valley. "My horse is tethered just ahead," the cowboy said finally. "We'll ride double until we're clear of Harmon's men." Olivia stopped short. "Why are you helping me? What do you want in return?" The cowboy turned, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Not every man in these parts is a monster, madam. Some of us still remember what decency means." "I don't even know your name," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Flynn Jericho." He touched the brim of his hat. "And you are Olivia Neill." She hesitated. "I was traveling to Oregon to meet my uncle when our stagecoach was attacked. The driver and other passengers were killed. Harmon took me, said I'd bring a good price at the camps." Flynn's jaw tightened. "Harmon's been operating that auction circuit for years. Law can't seem to catch him with enough evidence to hang." He extended his hand. "Come on. My cabin's half a day's ride from here. You'll be safe there while I figure out how to get you to Oregon." Olivia took his hand, noticing the gentleness with which he helped her onto his horse despite his calloused palm and the visible scars across his knuckles. This was a man who knew violence but chose kindness. They rode through the night, the horse's steady gait lulling Olivia into an exhausted sleep against Flynn's solid back. She woke to sunlight filtering through pine boughs and the sight of a small cabin nestled in a protected valley, smoke curling from its stone chimney. "You're home," she asked, her voice raspy from thirst and disuse. Flynn nodded as he dismounted, then reached up to help her down. "It's not much, but it's mine, paid for in honest work." A woman emerged from the cabin door, gray hair tucked beneath a faded bandana. "Flynn Jericho, you were due back yesterday. I was about to send." She stopped short at the sight of Olivia. "Oh my, you poor dear, you look half dead." "Martha, this is Miss Neill. She needs our help," Flynn explained, leading Olivia forward. "Harmon's men are looking for her." Martha's kind face hardened at the name. "That devil. Come inside, child. We'll get you cleaned up and fed." Martha, Flynn explained as she bustled about preparing a bath, was his father's cousin who had come to keep house for him after his parents died of fever 3 winters past. She had the capable hands of a frontier woman and the sharp tongue to match. "Flynn's father and I grew up together back east," Martha told Olivia as she helped her wash the dirt and blood from her hair. "When Edward wrote that he was dying and worried for his boy out here alone, I packed up and came. Someone needs to make sure this one eats something besides beans and jerky." Later, dressed in a simple cotton dress that Martha had taken in at the waist, Olivia sat at the rough-hewn table while Flynn explained his plan. "I'll ride to Fort Collins tomorrow, speak with the marshal there. He's a good man, one who'd like nothing better than to see Harmon swing." "But you can't leave her here," Martha protested. "What if Harmon's men track you back?" Flynn rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "You're right, we'll all go. I've been meaning to stock up on supplies anyway." That night, Olivia slept in Martha's small room while the older woman took a pallet by the hearth. Despite her exhaustion, sleep came fitfully. Images of the auction wagon, of Harmon's leering face, jolted her awake repeatedly. Near dawn, she gave up and padded softly to the kitchen for water. Flynn sat at the table, cleaning his revolver by the light of a single candle. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without looking up. Olivia shook her head, pouring herself water from the pitcher. "Nightmares." Flynn nodded, his hands moving with practiced precision over the weapon. "They fade with time. You sound like you know." He was silent for a long moment. "I was a scout for the army during the war, saw things no man should see." His eyes, when they met hers, held an understanding that needed no words. "But we survive, we go on." "How?" Olivia asked, her voice cracking. "One day at a time," Flynn answered simply. "And by remembering that there's still good in this world despite the evil men do." In the soft candlelight, with his guard momentarily lowered, Flynn Jericho seemed less the hardened frontiersman and more a man carrying his own wounds with quiet dignity. Something stirred in Olivia's chest, not quite hope, but perhaps its distant cousin. They set out for Fort Collins at first light, Olivia riding double with Martha on Flynn's sturdy pack mule while he rode ahead on his stallion. The journey would take 2 days at a steady pace. "Flynn doesn't say much about his past," Martha confided as they followed a narrow trail through a mountain meadow, "but I know he rode with Sherman before coming west. He's seen the worst of men, which is why he works so hard to be one of the good ones." "What does he do now?" Olivia asked, watching Flynn's broad shoulders as he scouted the path ahead. "Raises horses, mostly. Breeds some of the finest stock in the territory, breaks them gentle, not like some who beat the spirit out of them." Martha adjusted her bonnet against the sun. "He's been known to hunt bounties too, but only the ones who truly deserve bringing in. Men like Harmon." By midday, they'd covered significant ground. Flynn called a halt beside a clear running stream to rest the animals and eat the bread and dried venison Martha had packed. "We'll camp tonight near Pike's Crossing," Flynn said, studying the terrain. "Should reach Fort Collins by tomorrow evening." As Martha dozed in the shade of a cottonwood, Olivia approached Flynn where he stood keeping watch. "I never properly thanked you," she said, "for saving me." Flynn shrugged, his eyes scanning the horizon. "No need for thanks." "There is," Olivia insisted. "You risked your life for a stranger. Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said softly. "They wouldn't. Most would have kept riding or worse, collected Harmon's reward." Flynn looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his gaze made her heart quicken. What were you doing traveling alone to Oregon? Olivia sighed, settling on a fallen log. My father died last year, left nothing but debts. My uncle in Oregon City owns a millinery shop. He offered me work and a place to stay. No husband, sweetheart, she shook her head. I was engaged once back in Pennsylvania. Richard Morgan, the banker's son, her mouth twisted in a bitter smile. He broke it off when father's business failed, couldn't marry a penniless shopkeeper's daughter. His loss, Flynn said simply. Olivia looked up, surprised by the quiet conviction in his voice. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. Their moment was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Flynn was instantly alert, hand moving to his holster. Get Martha. Hide in those rocks, he ordered, pointing to a jumble of boulders. Don't come out until I call. Heart racing, Olivia hurried to wake Martha. They concealed themselves among the rocks, watching as Flynn positioned himself casually by the stream. Hat pulled low as though resting, 3 riders appeared around the bend. Even from a distance, Olivia recognized Harmon's stocky figure. She pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Afternoon, Flynn called out, raising a hand in greeting. Water's good if your horses are thirsty. The men reined in, eyeing Flynn suspiciously. Seen anyone pass this way? Harmon asked. Young woman, blonde hair, probably wearing rags by now. Flynn shook his head. Been here couple hours. Only traffic was a supply wagon headed to the mining camps. She's worth $100 to me, Harmon said, his small eyes narrowing. $200 if she's unharmed. That's so. Flynn sounded mildly interested. What'd she do? Stole from me. Harmon spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Valuable property. Flynn's posture remained relaxed, but Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders. I'll keep an eye out, headed to Fort Collins myself. Harmon studied him for a long moment, then nodded grudgingly. Ask for me at the Broken Spoke if you find her. Name's Harmon. Will do. Flynn touched his hat brim. The 3 men watered their horses quickly, then continued up the trail. Flynn waited until they were well out of sight before signaling to Olivia and Martha. We need to change course, he said grimly. They're headed toward Fort Collins, and Harmon's not a fool. He'll be watching the main routes. Where will we go? Martha asked, her usual unflappable demeanor showing cracks of worry. Flynn considered for a moment. There's a settlement about 30 miles east, small place called Riverton. Friend of mine there might help us. They traveled until nightfall, taking a less used trail that Flynn assured them few knew about. When they finally made camp in a sheltered hollow, Olivia's entire body ached with fatigue, but she forced herself to help Martha prepare a cold supper while Flynn tended the animals. He's worried, Martha murmured, watching her cousin's son as he moved efficiently around the camp. Flynn gets quiet when he's working out a problem. This is all my fault, Olivia said miserably. I've put you both in danger. Martha's work-worn hand covered hers. Child, the only one at fault is Harmon and men like him. Flynn would never turn away someone in need, and neither would I. Later, as Martha slept wrapped in her quilt, Olivia found Flynn sitting apart from the camp, rifle across his knees. You should rest, he said without turning. Tomorrow will be another long day. I keep thinking about what Harmon said, Olivia replied, sitting beside him on a fallen log. About me being valuable property, like I was a horse or cattle. Flynn's jaw tightened. There are men who see women that way. Especially out here where they're scarce. Is that why you never married? The question slipped out before she could stop it. I'm sorry, that was forward of me. To her surprise, Flynn smiled slightly. Martha's been wondering the same for years. He was quiet for a moment. Truth is, I was married once, very briefly. Her name was Caroline. She came west with her brother after the war, full of ideas about frontier adventure. What happened? Olivia asked softly. Reality happened. Winter happened. Her brother took sick and died our first year here. Caroline couldn't bear the isolation after that. His voice held no bitterness, only a resigned acceptance. She went back east. Last I heard, she remarried a shopkeeper in Boston. I'm sorry. Flynn shrugged. She wasn't wrong, this life isn't for everyone. It's hard, dangerous, and often lonely. Yet you stayed. This is where I belong. His eyes reflected the starlight as he gazed at the vast expanse above them. Out here, a man knows exactly where he stands. The mountains don't lie, the seasons don't pretend. There's a honesty to it that I never found back east. Olivia studied his profile in the moonlight, struck by the quiet certainty in his voice. Flynn Jericho knew who he was and where he belonged in the world. After months of uncertainty and fear following her father's death, she envied that certainty. "Get some sleep," Flynn said gently. "I'll wake Martha for the next watch in a few hours." Olivia nodded but impulsively reached out to touch his arm before rising. "Thank you, Flynn, not just for rescuing me but for seeing me as a person, not property." His hand briefly covered hers, warm and reassuring. "Rest now, Olivia." As she curled beneath her borrowed blanket, Olivia realized it was the first time he'd used her given name. She fell asleep with the sound of it echoing in her mind. They reached Riverton late the following afternoon, a cluster of wooden buildings surrounding a dusty main street, with scattered homesteads visible on the surrounding plains. Flynn led them to a modest house on the town's edge, where a tall man with an impressive gray beard emerged to greet them. "Flynn Jericho, as I live and breathe, and Miss Martha too." He helped Martha down from the mule with surprising gentleness for his large frame. "What brings you to my humble establishment?" "Trouble, I'm afraid, Doc," Flynn replied, assisting Olivia. "This is Miss Olivia Neill." She had a run-in with Silas Harmon. The doctor's jovial expression hardened. "Harmon, is it? Come inside, all of you. My wife just put coffee on." Dr. Samuel Porter and his wife Abigail welcomed them warmly into their comfortable home. After hearing their story, the doctor was adamant. "You'll stay here tonight. Harmon doesn't know about your connection to me, and Riverton's small enough that strangers are noticed immediately. If his men come looking, we'll have warning." Over a hearty supper, they discussed options. Fort Collins was no longer safe if Harmon was watching the trails. The doctor suggested an alternative. Marshal Dunwood in Granite Springs would love nothing better than to arrest Harmon. He's been building a case for months if Miss Neill would testify. "It's risky," Flynn argued. "Harmon has friends in unexpected places. And enemies in more," the doctor countered. "Including Judge Williams, who lost his niece to Harmon's auction wagon 3 years back. They never found her." The conversation continued late into the evening with plans made and discarded. Eventually, it was decided. Flynn would escort Olivia to Granite Springs while Martha remained safely with the Porters. The marshal would arrange protection for Olivia until she could testify against Harmon. That night, Olivia lay awake in the Porters' guest room, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the settlement. The events of the past week swirled in her mind: the horror of the auction wagon, the miracle of Flynn's appearance, and now this unexpected detour in her journey. Oregon seemed very far away, and strangely, the thought didn't distress her as much as it should. For the first time since her father's death, she felt something beyond mere survival, a tentative curiosity about what tomorrow might bring. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Olivia rose and opened the door to find Flynn standing in the hallway, his expression troubled. "I've been thinking about tomorrow," he said quietly. "It's a 2-day ride to Granite Springs, and Harmon's men could be anywhere." "I'm not afraid," Olivia replied, surprised to find it mostly true. Flynn's mouth curved slightly. "I'm beginning to see that." His eyes held hers. "But I have a suggestion that might make things safer. It's unconventional." "After everything that's happened, I think we're well past conventional, Mr. Jericho." "Flynn," he corrected automatically. "What I'm suggesting is, well, if we travel as husband and wife, it would draw less attention. A married couple on their way to visit family raises fewer questions than a single man escorting an unmarried woman." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You want to pretend to be married?" "Just for the journey," Flynn assured her quickly. "I wouldn't suggest it if I could think of a safer alternative." The practical logic was sound, yet Olivia couldn't help but wonder if there was something more in his hesitant proposal. The thought sent an unexpected thrill through her. "Very well," she agreed. "For safety's sake, I'll be Mrs. Jericho until we reach Granite Springs." Flynn's relief was visible. "We'll leave at first light, try to get some rest." They departed Riverton as the sun crested the eastern plains, Flynn riding his stallion with Olivia behind him, her arms encircling his waist. Dr. Porter had provided her with suitable traveling clothes and a borrowed wedding band that felt strange and weighty on her finger. "Remember," Flynn said as they rode past the last outlying farm, "if anyone asks, we've been married 3 months and are visiting your ailing mother in Granite Springs." Olivia nodded against his back, acutely aware of the solid warmth of him. This strange intimacy of their pretense was both unsettling and oddly comforting. They stopped midday at a small trading post to rest the horse and purchase supplies. As Flynn predicted, the storekeeper was inclined to conversation. "Don't get many travelers this time of year," he remarked, weighing coffee beans. "What brings you folks through?" "My wife's mother is unwell," Flynn answered smoothly, his hand finding Olivia's with natural ease. "We're hoping to reach Granite Springs before the weather turns." The storekeeper nodded sympathetically. "Best hurry then. Word is there's a storm brewing in the high country." As they prepared to leave, a group of rough-looking men rode up to the trading post. Flynn tensed, pushing Olivia slightly behind him. "Get on the horse," he murmured, casual-like. Olivia complied, her heart racing as she recognized one of the men who had been with Harmon at the stream. Flynn mounted behind her, taking the reins and urging the horse into a walk that wouldn't attract attention. They had nearly reached the bend in the road when a shout went up behind them. "Hey, hold up there!" Flynn didn't look back. "Hold tight," he whispered, then spurred the horse into a gallop. Gunshots cracked behind them as they raced down the road, dust billowing in their wake. Flynn kept them low over the horse's neck, one arm protectively around Olivia as they thundered across the open plain. A bullet whined past, too close for comfort. Flynn veered suddenly off the road, heading for a rocky outcropping that offered potential cover. The pursuing riders followed, closing the distance on their fresher mounts. "There." Flynn pointed to a narrow ravine cutting between 2 bluffs. "They'll have to come through single file." Their horse, laboring now under the double burden, stumbled slightly as they entered the ravine. Flynn dismounted quickly, pulling Olivia down and slapping the horse to send it running ahead as a diversion. "This way," he urged, leading her into a crevice in the ravine wall barely visible unless one knew where to look. The space widened into a small cave, offering shelter and concealment. "How did you know this was here?" Olivia whispered as they pressed back into the shadows. "I've ridden these lands for 15 years, Flynn replied, checking his revolver. "Learning every hiding place becomes second nature." They fell silent as hoofbeats echoed through the ravine. Men's voices called to each other, angry and determined. Olivia held her breath as shadows passed the cave entrance. "They're following the horse," Flynn murmured, "but they'll be back when they realize the trick." "What do we do?" Flynn's eyes, intent in the dim light, met hers. "Wait until dark, then make our way north on foot. There's a line shack about 5 miles from here where we can shelter until it's safe to move on." The afternoon stretched endlessly as they waited in tense silence, listening for any sound of returning pursuit. As the light began to fade, Flynn cautiously checked outside. "It's clear for now. We should move while we have some light." They slipped from the cave and made their way through the gathering dusk, keeping to the rocky terrain where they would leave minimal tracks. Flynn moved with the silent confidence of a man accustomed to wilderness survival, occasionally offering his hand to help Olivia over difficult passages. Night had fully fallen by the time the line shack appeared, a crude but sturdy shelter used by cowboys watching distant herds. Flynn approached cautiously, signaling Olivia to wait while he checked inside. "It's empty," he called softly, "and there's dry wood for a fire." The shack was sparse but clean, with a small stove, rough bunk, and little else. Flynn quickly built a fire in the stove while Olivia took inventory of their supplies. The saddlebags he'd grabbed when they abandoned the horse contained jerky, coffee, and hardtack enough for a day or two. "We can't risk staying longer than tonight," Flynn said, accepting the cup of coffee she offered. "Harmon's men will be combing these hills come morning." Olivia sank onto the edge of the bunk, the events of the day catching up to her. Why is he so determined? "Surely one woman isn't worth all this trouble." Flynn's expression darkened. "It's not about you specifically, it's about control. If one woman escapes and lives to tell about it, his entire operation is threatened." He sat beside her, the bunk sagging slightly under their combined weight. "Besides, men like Harmon can't abide losing, makes them look weak. And looking weak out here is dangerous," Olivia concluded. "Exactly." Flynn studied her face in the flickering light from the stove. "You understand more than most." "I'm learning," she said softly. "Not by choice, but I'm learning." Something shifted in Flynn's gaze, admiration, perhaps, or something deeper. "You're remarkable, Olivia Neill. Most women would have broken by now." Without thinking, Olivia reached out to touch the scar that traced his jawline. "We all have strength we don't know about until it's tested." Flynn caught her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. For a breathless moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, as though giving her every chance to pull away, Flynn leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, a question rather than a demand. Olivia answered by sliding her hand to the nape of his neck, drawing him closer. His arms encircled her, strong and secure, as the kiss deepened into something hungry and honest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing quickly, Olivia saw vulnerability in Flynn's eyes that his usual stoic demeanor had hidden. "I shouldn't have," he began. Olivia silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Yes, you should have, and I wanted you to." Flynn rested his forehead against hers. "This isn't the life I would have chosen for you, danger and hardship." "I didn't choose it either," Olivia replied. "But I'm choosing now. I'm choosing you, Flynn Jericho, if you'll have me." His answer was another kiss, fiercer than the first, carrying promises neither was ready to voice aloud. They spent the night in each other's arms, finding moments of tenderness amid the danger that still lurked outside. Morning came too quickly. They left the line shack at first light, traveling cross-country toward Granite Springs. The journey was arduous without horses, but Flynn's knowledge of the land allowed them to make steady progress while avoiding the main trails where Harmon's men might be watching. By midday, they reached a ridgeline that offered a view of the valley ahead. Granite Springs lay nestled against the foothills, smoke rising from chimneys in the clear autumn air. "We'll be there by nightfall," Flynn said. "Once you're under Marshal Dunwood's protection, Harmon won't dare make a move." Olivia shaded her eyes, studying the distant settlement. "And then what? I testify and continue to Oregon?" Flynn was quiet for a long moment. "Is that still what you want?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Everything's changed." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I have a proposition for you, Olivia Neill. A real one this time. I'm listening. After you testify, after Harmon is dealt with, come back with me to my ranch." His eyes, clear and direct, held hers. "Not as a temporary guest, but as my wife, for real this time." Olivia's heart pounded as she searched his face. "Are you certain? You barely know me." "I know enough," Flynn said simply. "I know you're brave and resilient. I know you face life head-on. I know I've never felt for anyone what I feel for you." His mouth quirked in a half-smile. "And I think you might feel something similar." "I do," Olivia whispered. "But your life is dangerous, isolated all the things that drove Caroline away." Flynn nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. "It is, but it's also beautiful and free. And I wouldn't be asking if I didn't believe with everything in me that we could build something worthwhile together." Olivia looked out over the valley, considering. The path to Oregon represented safety and convention, a respectable life in her uncle's shop, perhaps eventually a sensible marriage. The path with Flynn offered uncertainty, but also possibility, a chance to define herself on her own terms, alongside a man who saw her true worth. "Yes," she said finally, turning back to him with a smile that lit her entire face. "Yes, I'll marry you, Flynn Jericho." His answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He pulled her close, sealing their promise with a kiss that spoke of home and hope and futures intertwined. They reached Granite Springs as dusk descended, making their way directly to the marshal's office. Marshal Dunwood, a weathered man with sharp eyes and a reputation for incorruptibility, listened to their story with mounting anger. "I've been after Harmon for years," he confirmed, pouring coffee for his weary visitors. "With your testimony, Miss Neill, and the evidence I've gathered, we can finally bring him to justice." Flynn explained their situation, the pursuit, the abandoned horse, their journey on foot. The marshal nodded grimly. "You'll both stay at my sister's boarding house tonight. It's the safest place in town, and I'll post deputies. Tomorrow we'll take your formal statement, then gather a posse to go after Harmon." True to his word, Marshal Dunwood personally escorted them to a tidy boarding house run by his widowed sister, Mrs. Adler. She fussed over Olivia, providing hot water for bathing and a borrowed nightgown. "Such a terrible ordeal," she clucked, turning down the bed in a small but comfortable room. "But you're safe now, dear." Later, after Olivia had bathed and changed, Flynn came to bid her good night. He looked different, freshly shaven and wearing a clean shirt borrowed from one of the marshal's deputies. "You look handsome," Olivia said, suddenly shy in her borrowed nightgown and wrapper. Flynn smiled, reaching out to tuck a strand of damp hair behind her ear. "And you look beautiful, future Mrs. Jericho. The marshal says we should be able to leave in a few days, once my statement is recorded and the posse returns," Olivia said. "Will we go straight to your ranch?" "First to Riverton to collect Martha," Flynn replied. "She'd never forgive me if she missed our wedding." The mention of a wedding sent a flutter of nerves and excitement through Olivia. "I have nothing to wear, no family to invite." Flynn took her hands in his. "Martha can help with a dress. As for family, Dr. Porter has already agreed to give you away, and his wife is practically planning the celebration already." Olivia laughed softly. "You've thought of everything." "I want to do this right," Flynn said seriously. "You deserve a proper wedding, Olivia, not just a rushed ceremony before a justice of the peace." Impulsively, she rose on tiptoes to kiss him. "I don't care about fancy trappings, I just want you." Flynn returned the kiss with restrained passion, mindful of their surroundings. "I should go before Mrs. Adler comes to check on you." He pulled back reluctantly. "Sleep well, I'll see you at breakfast." The next morning brought startling news. Shortly after dawn, a rider had galloped into town with word that Silas Harmon and 2 of his men had been found dead at their camp just outside Riverton. There had been a dispute over money, apparently, and one of his own men had shot him before fleeing. "Justice has a way of finding men like Harmon," Marshal Dunwood remarked as he shared the news. "Though I would have preferred to see him stand trial." For Olivia, the news brought a complex mixture of relief and disbelief. The nightmare was truly over. Harmon would never again force a woman into his auction wagon. With the immediate threat removed, they were free to leave Granite Springs after Olivia provided her formal testimony for the record. The marshal arranged for horses and supplies, and 3 days after their arrival, they set out for Riverton to collect Martha. The reunion with Flynn's cousin was emotional. Martha embraced Olivia as though she were already family, then scolded Flynn for proposing under such inappropriate circumstances. "At least wait until the poor girl has had time to recover from her ordeal," she insisted. Flynn caught Olivia's eye over Martha's head, his expression apologetic. Olivia merely smiled and squeezed his hand. "Actually, Martha, I've already accepted," she said, "and I was hoping you might help me prepare for a wedding." Martha's outrage transformed instantly to delight. "Oh, well, that changes everything. Abigail and I were just saying how lovely her mother's lace would look with that cream silk she's been saving." The wedding took place 2 weeks later in Dr. Porter's parlor, with Judge Williams officiating. Olivia wore a simple cream gown adorned with borrowed lace, and Flynn looked uncommonly handsome in his best suit, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. As they exchanged vows, Olivia marveled at the strange turns of fate that had brought her here from the horror of the auction wagon to this moment of profound joy. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Williams declared. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Jericho." Flynn's kiss was gentle, respectful of their audience, but his eyes promised more when they were alone. The small gathering celebrated with a feast prepared by the women of Riverton, many of whom had taken a keen interest in the romantic tale of the cowboy who had rescued a woman from Harmon's auction wagon. By evening's end, the story had grown to epic proportions, with Flynn single-handedly fighting off a dozen of Harmon's men. "Let them talk," Flynn murmured as they slipped away to the room Dr. Porter had prepared for them. "The truth is between us." Alone at last, Flynn took Olivia's face in his hands. "Are you happy, Mrs. Jericho?" "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully, though also a little afraid. "Of what?" Flynn's brow furrowed with concern. "Of how much I love you already," Olivia admitted. "It's overwhelming sometimes." Flynn's expression softened. "I know, I feel it too." He drew her close. "But we have a lifetime to learn each other, to grow together. That's the adventure I want to share with you." Their life together began the next day when they rode out for Flynn's ranch in the shadow of the mountains. Martha accompanied them, declaring that they needed a chaperone for propriety's sake, even if they were married. Flynn's home, which had seemed modest during Olivia's brief first visit, now revealed itself as a place of surprising comfort and beauty. The cabin was solidly built with large windows that captured the mountain light. A kitchen garden flourished behind it, and in the distance horses grazed in fenced pastures. "It's not grand," Flynn said as he carried Olivia across the threshold, "but everything here was built with care." "It's perfect," Olivia replied, meaning it. "It feels like home already." In the weeks and months that followed, Olivia threw herself into learning the rhythms of ranch life. Martha proved a patient teacher, showing her how to manage a household on the frontier, everything from preserving vegetables to treating minor injuries when the doctor was days away. Flynn taught her to ride properly, to shoot a rifle for protection, and to read the weather in the mountains. At night, they discovered each other with the same careful attention they brought to all aspects of their shared life, their passion tempered by tenderness and deepening trust. By the following spring, Olivia had news that brought tears of joy to Flynn's eyes. "A baby," he whispered, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Our child." Martha was ecstatic, immediately beginning to knit tiny garments and planning modifications to the cabin to accommodate the growing family. Dr. Porter and his wife sent books on infant care and promised to attend the birth when the time came. That winter, as snow blanketed the valley and firelight cast golden shadows across their bedroom, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Eleanor, after Flynn's mother. Martha declared her the most beautiful baby ever born in Montana Territory, an assessment Flynn wholeheartedly supported. Holding his daughter for the first time, Flynn looked at Olivia with wonder. "You've given me more than I ever dreamed possible," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Olivia, exhausted but radiant, reached for his hand. "We've given each other a second chance at happiness, a family, a home." 3 years later, Eleanor was joined by a brother, Samuel, named for the doctor who had helped bring both children safely into the world. The Jericho Ranch prospered, becoming known throughout the territory for its fine horses and the warm hospitality of its mistress. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, Flynn presented Olivia with a locket containing miniature portraits of their children. "To remind you always of what began that day," he said, as he fastened it around her neck. Olivia touched the locket, then took Flynn's hand and placed it over her heart. "I need no reminder. The moment you caught my hand and whispered you're free is engraved here forever." Flynn pulled her close, his arms as strong and sure as they had been that first day. "And you've been freeing me ever since, Olivia Jericho, from loneliness, from doubt, from the past." As twilight settled over the valley they called home, Olivia stood in her husband's embrace, watching their children play in the yard. From terror and captivity, she had found her way to this a life rich with purpose and love, a freedom more profound than merely escaping chains. "No regrets?" Flynn asked softly, a question he still posed occasionally, as though marveling at their good fortune. "Not one," Olivia answered, turning in his arms to kiss him. "Every step that brought me here was worth it." And as stars began to appear in the Montana sky, the cowboy who had once offered freedom to a desperate woman held his family close, knowing that the true liberation had been his own.